Nothing in this podcast is meant for medical advice. Please discuss your own healthcare with your healthcare providers. Thank you. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Midlife is not a crisis, it's a catalyst to your best life. Join me each week for a dose of mental, physical, and spiritual health, life, grief, adventure, and opportunity. It's time to flip the record over.
In grief, the biggest lie we tell ourselves is that we are alone. My name is Dr. Amy Lindsey. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis. Today we're going to talk about grief as a connector. We often keep our heads down when there is a loss, and we can fall into despair. We can fall into this feeling that no one understands what we're going through. And it feels very, very lonely. And this can go on for years and years until hopefully one day, maybe we look up. And when we look up, we see so many other people have also suffered loss and grief. Today, we're going to talk about grief as a connector and a grief as a portal for connection to other people. And I can't wait to welcome my guest today. He has a radio show worldwide, the morning show on KEXP, 90.3 FM in Seattle, 92.7 FM in the Bay Area, and KEXP.org worldwide. He's been on the air for over 30 years, bringing people together. He has a vinyl record club. We love our vinyl here on Welcome to Your B-Side. He owns a bar in Seattle that brings people together. He is an avid runner and also a podcaster. He's a father, and he happens to be my spouse. Welcome, DJ John Richards, to Welcome to Your B-Side.
It's a very nice introduction, Amy. Thank you. It's very nice to be here, and former co-host of a great podcast called The Doctor and the DJ. So we have little experience talking to each other on and off the mic.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring John in today specifically to talk about grief, something that he is all too familiar with, but we wanted to talk about it as a connector. So the first thing I want to ask you about is, what was the first death and loss that you suffered in your life that changed your life forever?
Well, the first loss I ever experienced in my life was my grandfather passing away when I think I was 14 or 15 years old, 15 maybe. And, my mother lost her father. I saw it through her eyes, and it was very illuminating because, my grandpa was there one day. And in fact, I saw him the night before, right around Christmas, and I'd given him a hug and said goodbye. And the next day he was gone. And that was, that's traumatic for anyone to just never see that person again. But I think the one that changed my life really was my father passing away. I would have been in my 20s. And at the time, my dad, he was fighting all kinds of different ailments, cancers and all kinds of things. He was a pretty unhealthy guy. And my brother and I had gone out and visited him a lot while he was struggling to hold on to life and fight these cancers. And we had a tough relationship, my father and I. And so there was a lot in that, and that is tied into your grief. The relationship you had with them when they were here is something you deal with when they're gone, quite a bit, actually, and I don't think we talk enough about that. It also is jumping ahead, it's also good to try to resolve issues before they're gone, I can say with experience. So I was going out there and visiting my father, and I also was you mentioned all my years on the radio. At the time, I was actually on the air 7 days a week. I was doing the morning show. It was even longer than it is now. I was doing the local show on my radio station on Saturdays, and I was actually at another radio station on Sunday nights. So I was just learning the craft and trying to be on the air, and didn't know any better, to be honest with you. It's just like, well, you give me a radio show, I'm going to take it. As anyone who's dealt with cancer and that long fight, you're not sure when they're going to leave. And on that Saturday, in the afternoon, early afternoon, my dad died. And I got the news, and I just visited him and my brother, called me and let me know. And I remember I went and got some food. It was weird. We immediately went out and got food up on Capitol Hill. I remember that. And I had a radio show. So I just decided after I ate, I was like, well, I guess you just get on the radio. And then I got to the radio station and it was a local show. It's all Seattle music. And I just started grabbing things that I thought meant something to me, meant something in the world of grief or loss, because I didn't know any better. And then before I get on the air, I actually had this thought like, well, how are people going to understand what I'm doing? They're not going to understand why this show is a little depressing, kind of dark, kind of themed. And so I just popped on the mic and I said, hey, it's John Richards and you're listening to Audio Oasis, the name of the show. I have to say something. And I'd never been this open and this honest on the air. I mean, I'm always honest on the air, but like really honest about your feelings on the air is a very difficult thing to do. Like to be yourself it takes some work to let go. Well, someone dying and you turning on a live microphone to thousands of people, that'll give you a quick lesson. And I just said, hey, my dad died. And I'm so sorry to drop that on you on the air. That is a pretty heavy thing on a Saturday night. The next 3 hours is going to be me processing that through music. I'm going to play a bunch of stuff I love. And luckily, I was in the Pacific Northwest. So there is tons of dark, deep, rainy, kind of like not depressing, but like, dark stuff that I can choose from. So ended up being actually one of the best at the time, probably the best radio show I'd ever put together, just by simply honest.
So you got the news that your father had passed, and on the same day, you showed up to work and did your radio show, turned on the mic, and just were honest. And what was the response to that?
At the time we were, you would deal with the phones still. We were always still behind, now we're way ahead of the curve, by the way. But at the time you didn't, you weren't dealing with email really. You weren't dealing with texting. You'd get phone calls. The phone lit up all night. I couldn't keep up with it. It was off the hook. And I tried to as much as I could. And this is something I've started to learn was it wasn't just about, hey man, I'm so sorry. God, that's awful. And I really appreciate you being here. There's a lot of that. People started talking about their own grief, which, at the time, I've learned this over the years, not the best time to talk about your own grief when someone's grieving, but they meant
In that
well.
first early stage. Yes.
Especially that early stage, like, oh, my dad died too. Now you're processing their grief. But put that aside. I didn't even have that knowledge then. I just really appreciated that people also had been dealing with some kind of grief recently. There was a lot of that, when I was able to answer the phone. That was my first introduction to the world of, oh, I say this a lot, but you're not alone. You're like, there's other people out there dealing with this in real time. And now imagine this guy is on the radio as you're dealing with your grief and you suddenly hear about that. And that was life-changing to me because not only did I lose my father, that's significant. Not only did I go through that process of watching him die, that was very difficult. Not only did I go through the act of forgiveness and all of that, but my career was also now in this grief space because of the nature of what I do. And so, yeah, that was absolutely life-changing.
Well, then how did that propel your work forward as a human being and as a radio host? What happened next? How did that impact the community of listeners? How did that impact you personally? And then what would you say was built after that?
Being on the radio is interesting. It's a very it's odd, but it's a very almost isolating thing. You're doing a show and you're talking to these people, but you're alone in your head while you communicate with them. You're alone in what you're saying, how you're saying it. The music, in my particular case, I program the music myself. So I'm also, working through that as well. And so it was the first time I had worked all this out that was inside of me and put it out into the world. That fundamentally changed my career, actually. And I didn't know it at the time. I had no idea. But what I felt was, look, man, when you're with yourself, when you can be honest and you can deliver that. I've done enough radio now to be able to deliver it. It's not just about saying it. It's about how you deliver it and how you talk about it and how you include people. So it's not just about you necessarily. That's hard to listen to. So I started to just be more me. Just like, it's hard to explain, but it's just more me. Just like, hey, I got confidence. Like, hey, maybe I'm okay. Maybe people are interested in me or my personality or sense of humor or my sadness. And so it started to help me evolve professionally as a DJ and start to open up about things on the air. That was the first step.
What happened next? Were you able to have something that happened in your life with more grief that then brought your radio show forward even more?
Just a couple years after that, I got the news my mom had cancer and she was battling lung cancer. That was something I didn't share immediately on the air, but as she was doing chemo and I wanted to go visit her and be with my mom, she's in Spokane, which is, 5 hours away. I had to start telling people why I'm gone. I started to talk on the air about cancer and about that. So that was not grief, but it was a very heavy subject and that people have been dealing with. And then as she was fighting for her life, I went over and I unplugged and went back to Spokane, where I grew up in my childhood home. I slept in my bed. I just had a baby. I just had our son, and it was just like weeks old when I had went over to Spokane. So I have a newborn baby. I'll speed through, like anyone who's dealt this knows there's a long path to someone passing. But she did pass, and it was awful. And my mom and I were extremely close, best of friends. Just if there's one person who's believed in me my entire life, it was her. And at times she was the only person, including myself, who believed in me. So that was a very just an absolutely devastating loss to me. And I just had this baby. I functioned really well, actually, but I felt like I couldn't even understand what this world was about. My father's death had prepared me a little bit for it. But that was, I went and I announced it on my email list. And then I went back to Seattle and I started talking about losing my mom and what that was about right when I got back.
On your radio show.
And I played, on the radio show. And before my mom passed, by the way, she loved music. She loved my show. She would stream it and make requests once in a while or ask about a band. It was awesome. And we worked on her playlist for her funeral because she was like, I don't want any of that church shit. I don't want any of that. We're doing it at church, but I'm not going church music. I said, I got you, Mom. So we would sit and we put together a playlist. And I also put together music when she was struggling to listen to. And so when I got back, I played that music is what I actually did. It wasn't any official show. I was just playing music. And my God, the response was incredible. People really appreciated me sharing that. And the same thing that happened with my dad, but now you can get emails and other ways to communicate. In that short time span, we'd advanced, and so now you really saw people communicating with me about their own loss, about this grief thing. And it was really eye-opening. And so, some time passes, and I'm dealing with my grief and I'm dealing with that. And it's not every day on the show. Rest assured, if you tune into the morning show, it's not grief every day. But it started to come around the anniversary. She passed November 13th. I started thinking I would do that again. And so I did. And I said, just sort of off the cuff, I said, this is the mom show. This is going to be dedicated to my mom. Last year I wasn't really prepared for this. I was just playing new music, but I'm going to play some songs that both I played at her funeral, but also stuff I grew up with and stuff she liked and some songs around healing, around grief. I have never seen response like that. I have never seen it. It was unbelievable how many people, they weren't really prepared for it, but they were really appreciative of it. And so, of course, you can, this starts like in the next year, it's like, oh, this is the mom show. This is the mom show. And we start looking into it and we start realizing like, this is the most listened to show ratings wise that KEXP has. And it's about grief. It's about death, but it's more about grief. It's more about what we do with that. And also I started saying, this is the grief is the loneliest feeling on earth. You don't understand why people are outside, why traffic lights are turning green and red, why anyone cares about the stupidest little shit, and you feel alone. And so I started to say, hey, you're not alone. You're not alone in your grief. You're not alone in this situation. And it's ended up being a phrase that is very much associated with me and has helped a lot of people. And you can apply it to so many things, mental health and other depression and grief. And so I started talking about that. Anyways, it just kept going and going and going. And over years, what had happened, Amy, is like as you're dealing with your grief. You're never over it. I grieve her to this day, but I'm further away from it. I'm able to process it. I'm able to like see it as a thing. Well, then it started to become about other people's grief more and more. And then, it's been 20
I
years.
think we're on
past-
top of the 20th year anniversary
Yeah.
of the Mom Show because
We are.
she passed in 2004 and your first Mom Show was the anniversary, which was 2005. So
Yeah, that's what
your Mom Show this year is the
That's-
20th anniversary of
that's that. Yeah.
of this.
So that's good to know.
Yeah.
I will mention that. Thank you. Thank you for the math.
Oh, you're welcome.
I may not have mentioned that. And and then it became about everybody else's grief.
Yeah.
It's not, I mention in my mom, I play a couple songs at most, but it's a better way to go about it. I've evolved to be able to bring it in for other people, especially, everyone who's grieving is grieving, but especially people new to grief. It's really helpful that they feel less alone. And in these messages and these songs, that happens. And I'll jump ahead really quick too. I did this alone for years. It was just my show. And every once in a while, too, has started to be joined by this amazing co-host, Dr. Amy Lindsey.
Hey, this is Dr. Amy Lindsey, your host of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis YouTube channel and podcast. If you want to be more involved with my B-Side community, you can join on School. That's SKOOL. You can join my school community. Look me up, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Welcome to your B-Side and request to join.
At some point, the other DJs actually approached me and they said, could we also do that? And I hadn't understood why I had done that. And they told me it was out of respect. That gets me a little bit because I love my colleagues. And I thought they just didn't want to do a grief show, and it's okay because a lot of our shows where we do a heavy subject, we do it all day. They approached me and asked, and I was like, of course. Oh my gosh. So now it's an all-day thing, and that's pretty recent.
Yeah. So I just want to synthesize this for the listeners of this podcast. What you did essentially were you were honest. You took your grief and you were generous enough to share it. And I think sometimes when we're in pain or when we're grieving or when something's going on in our life that's very difficult, we keep it private. And of course, we have every right to do that. But I feel like true healing in this world happens when we share and when we heal together, and that we are truly not alone and we don't heal alone in a vacuum. And you were literally able, because of your job, to broadcast grief. Like turn on a microphone and broadcast grief to the masses when your dad died. And then again, when your mother passed away, and you built a community around it. You have the listener community, and then you have your own colleagues and the radio station and the listeners and the donors and everybody. You have built this entire community around it. What would you say is the biggest benefit to your listeners through this whole process?
Well, I experienced it myself, to be honest. It's hard to get inside the listener's mind. They have so many different responses and appreciation for different aspects of it. It is feeling that you're not alone, that there's a place to go, that it's a normal feeling. So my sister, my little sister died a couple of years ago. And this had already been created. And so I was able to come back to it. I didn't, to me, it's crazy meant to be. Like, I had that as a thing to go to. It already was there. So when my sister passed, I was able to come around and have this community. And I didn't even realize how beneficial that was really until I was on the other side. This is very meta, but it was like I created this thing out of my own grief, and then it became a community grieving space. And I came into it with, oh my God, this is a horrific loss. And so I experienced what I felt a lot of other people did, that in this time alone, in this time of grieving, you have community. And almost more importantly, community you don't even know. And so you don't just have those people around you who are also grieving the same death. And that can get really sticky and weird, and people have a different relationship with the person who died, and they're dealing with it and you're dealing with it. And if you have any kind of a strange relationship, well, you're not grieving like I am, and you're not, It can get really ugly and not be very beneficial. But to have this space, I realized people just knew that it was a normal thing because we don't talk about it. I swear to God, we talk about death all the time. And what really, really hit me was we don't talk about grief. We weren't talking about actual grief, not just a process where you go through these stages, but real grief, real loss, real like loneliness around this. And so I think the main thing really was the creating community part of this.
So I want to bring up death and music. So you and I,
Familiar?
yes, you and I co-founded an event we call Death and Music. We say it's the second funeral because the first one you weren't ready for. So why don't you talk a little bit about its inception and how that event goes and just a little bit about that live event, because now that's a live in-person event, not just on the radio.
Yeah, it's really unique, just like the show. And we, like all the good ideas that my wife Amy and I have ever come up with, it started just sitting having a glass of wine at, I think we were at a restaurant in our old neighborhood. Actually, it's when we talked about it a bit too. Maybe we planned it that night, but we had just sat and we're talking about this idea. That we didn't like. We're doing the show, but there was something missing. There was like a physical manifestation of what we're doing on the air, which is important to me and what I do. I try as much as I can to create actual community things
In-person
around.
events.
Yeah. So we have like at KEXP, we have a giant space. It's called the Gathering Space. This idiot named it very literally because it's a place to gather. That's what radio is. It's a place to gather. Coffee shop, record club, or not record club, record store, So we kind of created what we do at KXP. So for this, it was, can we create something around this? And then you and I got to talking, and artists are always the voice for us. I mean, the show is about the music and the lyrics, bringing in the words you may not have. And that's why you listen to music. And when you're going through grief, there's no different. You need that music. If I'm feeling like grievy about that, there's an old album called Disintegration from The Cure I can go to. It'll pretty much lead me down the path I need to lead myself down. So we started talking about bringing artists in that we knew were going through grief that could sing a song about that and then explain where it came from. Like, this is where my grief came and this is my creative outlet for it. And wouldn't that really help people? And at the time, we didn't even really think second funeral. We were just like, this is just a gathering and we'll get together. And it was funny because we kind of aimed low and I mean, it was a great location, but I mean, attendance wise, it was, there's a place called Town Hall in Seattle and they have a room that its cap is like 800. Then they have a basement and the cap's like, what is it, 100, maybe 50? It's very small.
Well,
I don't even know.
it was 150 or 280.
It is, yeah.
And it sold it out though.
Yeah, we sold it out.
No room for any more people.
But there was, proof of concept. And luckily, the station was, got our weird idea and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And we ended up selling out theaters and we ended up selling out, really large areas. So Death and Music became a gathering space and the second funeral for community to gather. And how important is that? Having a second funeral, that you are actually ready now to start grieving with other people.
Yeah. And the event is now 1,000 plus people that attend the event.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, Town Hall's I think it's about 800, and we're back there this year. Our friend Ware Harmon passed away, and it's partly in tribute to him. He headed Town Hall, so we're going back there. But yeah, that's 800 people. It'll sell out. It's almost halfway sold out already, and it doesn't depend on the show. It just depends on the size of the room, and that tells you what kind of demand is out there for people to gather at a thing like this, where it's very hard to market. It's very hard to explain to people, like, hey, come to our second funeral. It's great. And the part they don't understand is, if you haven't gone, is it isn't tears. It is tears. It isn't just tears. It's laughter. It's surprise. It's really profound moments in a room full of other people, and you feel safe. And you realize how important live music, how much community, how much the safety of others is essential to our survival, let alone the grieving process. And it reminds you, I hope, because this is the main takeaway for me in grief, by the way. The main takeaway for me is you got to live each day to its fullest. These people are gone. There are 3 very important people in my life, and I fill rooms full of people, as do you, full of people who've lost someone. It reminds me as I look upon these people, I hope they're doing everything they can to make the most of this day and this life that they have, because you don't know.
Thank you for joining me today. I just have one final question. So this podcast is called Welcome to Your B-Side, which is essentially the second half of your life. And unfortunately for you and me and many of my listeners, we lost people early. But if you haven't lost people early, you definitely will start racking up those losses, which is so sad and unfortunate, but the truth, once you get to midlife. And what would you say to my listeners as they go into the second half of their life, how to use their grief to live the life that they were always meant to have?
It's funny, you go through these phases where, when you're younger, it's, oh, everyone's in a relationship. You're celebrating that. And the next thing, people are getting married. And then it's babies.
Divorce.
And then it's divorce. Yeah. And then it's death. And it's grieving. And it's parents, grandparents, and parents. We were out of order. As you know, we both lost siblings. And we both lost a parent or parents very early, I think. And I have people we lost 4 very dear friends last year. And one particular friend very close to me that was a very difficult loss. And I had people very, very close to me dealing with cancer, who I hope hold on for a long, long time. I don't want to say it makes me numb to it. I don't think that's right. I'm not numb to it. I am very much, for me, it's caused me to explore more of my spirituality, more of my how I see the universe, how I see my place in it, how I am not stuck with this of having things and having. I don't really care about that stuff so much. I care about experiences. I care about being around my loved ones. I care about seeing the world and living my life to its fullest. So that's in place as I know grief is coming and grief is happening. And I think I'm just more prepared to understand that it's a natural part of life. I'm going to be gone one day, and they are going to be gone one day. And I'm just way more prepared to be able to move forward through it as I've lost this person. Whereas before I couldn't move. I couldn't even function. And so I think I wish those people were still here, but I have been given a bit of a unique opportunity to experience it early so I can have the tools to deal with it as I'm in the second half of my life. And to be honest, as more and more of this comes, it's very important that you are prepared for that. And in a weird way too, I mean this, I'm not taking light in grief or death, but we kind of sometimes say it's almost like a video game. Some people are going to leave early that game and other people are going to hold on to the very end. And I sort of see life as that sometimes, that it's just different for everybody. And that I'm going to take this grief and learn, like I said earlier, I got to live each day to its fullest. And not just because I may be gone tomorrow, but because the people around me may be as well.
Yeah. So it's almost bittersweet that death gives us life. And experiencing the loss of other people, it gives us that life that we can't fuck around. Like,
You can't fuck around, and by looking at your own spirituality and how you sort of view the world, I've learned that I feel these people aren't gone. I honestly do. I honestly do. And if you had talked to me years ago, I think something happened. You're crazy. I believe that in my core, that I will see their spirits or be in their lives again. And so I think that's helpful as well, to be able to explore your own beliefs or non-beliefs and disbeliefs as you go along, because you can't help but look at that. And I think it's very helpful.
well, thank you for joining me today on Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis. This has been another podcast about grief, and I'm sure it will not be the last. Thank you, John. And where can people find you?
You can find me at djjohnrichards.com, or you can get information about, I think, everything I'm doing. You listed off a lot of things. Or just go to KEXP.org as well. I'm very active there, clearly.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for listening. You are not alone.
This has been another episode of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis with Dr. Amy Lindsey. Be sure to follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.